There's no reason why that couldn't be your story.
You don't have an expiration date.
Ooh, I love that.
The actual pages. Like, that's all that matters at the end of the day.
This is the Authors and Agents podcast.
Rachel, thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm super excited to chat with you about your debut novel, The Library of Shadows. Can you tell me all about it?
Oh, I absolutely can. And first off, Rose, let me just say how thrilled I am to be here. Genuinely so excited. The Library of Shadows, it's a young adult paranormal romantic comedy. So I pretty much just put all of the things that I love into this book. It's got a boarding school mystery. It's set in a haunted library, so it's got a little bit of spookiness, but I would call it spooky in the way that Ghostbusters is spooky, not a real horror.
Good to know. Good to know.
And of course, the love interest, he is, probably, maybe, 100-year-old ghost. So, we're bringing, very real, hocus pocus energy. It's not actually going to keep you up at night. But, it's maybe it's a little Twilighty. That's the kind of energy we're bringing to the table with the Library of Shadows. It's, sweet, it's spooky, it's silly. But I think it's got a lot of heart, and I feel the biggest thing for me is it's got a happily ever after. That's the most important.
Yes. Okay. But I mean, it'll keep you up at night, because you're mad that it's over and you want to reread it again. I think it's probably what you're trying to say.
I hope so.
Right. Well, what a journey. So exciting, right? To have your debut novel come out into the world. Tell me your journey. Tell me your story, how this happened.
Yeah, absolutely. It was probably both a little bit unorthodox, and I feel everybody's journey is a little bit unorthodox. Nobody has it happen exactly the same way. So for me, I went to school for creative writing. That's what my bachelor's degree is in. So I always knew I wanted to write something. I just didn't really know what or how or when. And in my undergrad program, we spent a lot of time focusing on things like short stories and poetry. And I had exactly one long form fiction class, and it was genre fiction. So it was cool, we're reading sci-fi, we're reading fantasy. And at the time, I thought, I am never going to write this. I know there's some contention in academia where people will occasionally look down on genre fiction, and that wasn't me. Yeah. I just genuinely thought I didn't have what it takes to write fantasy. I thought, this has been a very challenging class for me. Maybe we'll go a different route. But The Library of Shadows was actually the first manuscript I ever wrote the end on. It was the first book I ever wrote all the way through. I started drafting it like many of us. The pandemic happened, and suddenly I was at home with very little work to do. Right. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, now is the time to do this. And I actually started drafting a completely different story. And along the way, there was a character who came up, and his name was Mateo, and he was very alive. And I thought, what if he wasn't?
Right.
And so I started drafting. It was July of 2020, and I wrote that first draft. I finished it on Halloween that year. And I wrote it very, very differently than the version that exists today. I wrote it kind of after the passing of my grandmother, and so while my main character Este is reconciling with the grief of losing her father, I was also working through that in my draft, and it was very cathartic, but I was writing an adult dark fantasy book.
Yeah.
I was not writing a young adult rom-com.
No.
And then my rom-com fairy godmothers stepped in. I applied and was selected for Author Mentor Match the following winter, which was amazing. I worked with Joe Fenning and Serena Kaler, and they're incredible, brilliant. I adore them. And they absolutely changed my life because they said, well, what you have submitted to us is a book about a 22-year-old woman. She is not a young adult in the publishing sense. Would you please age her down? And I said, I will give you freshman year of college. And they said, okay, we'll leave her in college. That's fine. But we want you to make it a paranormal rom-com because we know that that's what you want it to be.
Yeah.
I had called it that and I was wrong. And they said, let's make this like actually real for you. So we like broke it down to the studs and completely rebuilt the book. I kept Este, Mateo, Posey, and then everybody else's roles in the stories changed. There's a character now who is like a very lovable himbo, who used to be like a very real villain. And so the book has completely changed, but I ended up querying that new version, the paranormal rom-com version of The Library of Shadows, so like a year after I finished drafting it, that fall, and 3 weeks later, I had an agent, and my agent, Claire Friedman at Inkwell Management, has been an absolute dream to work with. I love her so much. She's the best agent I could have ever asked for.
Right.
And we were on sub for a while, honestly, but I actually struck gold with my editor. Her name is Sarah Schoenfeld, and she's at Harper Teen, and she is actually brilliant. Actually, I don't understand how a brain like hers fits in a head that size. And she's been so fun to work with. We aged it down to high school. They are in boarding school. It is a real teen book now. She is a teen in the book for teens. So
a real YA book, right?
Yeah. It feels like it was the best possible choice for this book. The book is so much better for it. And when I wrote it, people told me I would have to do that, and they were right. And I love that they were right.
It just took you a little bit to be like, okay, fine, I'll actually do that.
Yeah, I was like, no, I want to write books that I want to read as a 20-year-old. And then I was like, but I wish I had this when I was 15. So...
Okay, but be real, I'm 29 years old and I still read books about 16-year-olds, so there'll be 20-year-olds who read it.
Yeah, I definitely do too. I'm 28, so I'm definitely living vicariously through these haunted library adventures.
Right. Well, amazing. What a journey. I mean, that is, I feel unique in the sense from what I have heard from bunches of other authors, that it was your very first manuscript that you wrote the end on, right? That this is now your debut. I mean, that's very special. You didn't have to go through shelving a bunch of manuscripts before getting to this point, which is awesome.
I didn't do that, but I think I paid my tithe in that there were a lot of things I did not finish. I shelved those myself.
Yes, you shelved your partially finished ones.
Yeah.
Well, so with Author Mentor Match, did they help you query, or did once you were done with it, you just queried on your own?
Yeah, that was something I really liked about that mentorship program in particular. And I do think it's such a shame that mentorship programs have sort of fizzled out. I think there will absolutely be a renaissance of sorts.
I hope so, yeah.
I am not sure when that will happen or how it will happen, but I do really hope it does. So for me, I did have my mentors' support through querying. It meant that I was able to give them my query list, and they were able to say, maybe don't query this person at this agency, or don't forget that you can only query one person here because a no from one is a no for all. And that kind of thing was really, really helpful to have that support. I actually did not know anything about querying before I started. I just recently was going through old messages and saw one where a year before I started querying, I asked if you had to pay an agent. I just had no idea how any of this was even structured. So I was really, really fortunate to have my mentor's support through that.
Well, I think that is wonderful that you did, because I think there's a lot of people who are in that spot where they have this dream, they have written their manuscript, or maybe they're still working on it, but it sometimes feels like not maybe that the information is like behind a gate, but that there's so much information too. If you like type how to get your book published, oh my gosh, you're going to be hit with so much different information, different guidance, and it can be confusing. It can be a lot, which is why I love this podcast. I love asking this question of authors and agents, because it's like, make it simple. Let's make it simple for us, right? As simple as we can to make it a little easier, because it's such a stressful experience altogether.
Definitely. And I think that was the gap that mentorship programs like really filled. Like just the knowledge gap that exists when you go from doing this recreationally to trying to do it professionally.
Yeah, there is a big gap there. So now, because you're a professional and you've done it professionally, what would your maybe like top tip or top tips be for other authors who are in the querying stage right now or just starting to do that?
Yeah, I have a tip that I don't think it's controversial, because I do think it is very sound advice. But I have thoughts about batch querying. And my thoughts are, if you are ready to query, you probably don't need to do batches. I think that the best advice regarding querying I ever received was you don't send until you're done working on the book. I think you have to be honest with yourself and admit that should you go on to sell or even to sign with an agent, you're going to probably have to do more edits. Like, this isn't the end of the road for that book, right. But don't leave loose ends. Don't leave, no, that's fine, I'll get it later. Like, polish those things up, and then you know that you've done everything within your power to get it ready for those agents. And at that point, the batches, you don't really need them. It'll either be a yes or a no, and it takes away some of that. I don't know. For me, the thought of doing batches was giving the control to the agents, and I liked the idea that it was in my hands for as long as I wanted it to be, and I wasn't going to rely on feedback from people who were saying no to me to impact the fate of my manuscript.
Oh, I like that mindset a lot, because I do think that people are like, well, I'll just test the waters. I'll see what people think. And if they like it, then that's great. But if not, then I'll change this and this and this. But it's like, no, really get it to the point where you love it. And whether they say yes or no, you're happy, because that, I think, mindset wise, makes it a lot easier. Because if they pass, you're like, okay, well, then it's just not for you, but I still like it and I'm happy with where it's at.
1000%. And it still hurts. Like, I will not say for a second I was like calm and collected while I was querying, but I knew that I was either going to get an agent or I was going to write a different book. It was either a yes for this one or something new, and both of those felt like good options for me because I'd done everything I could.
Yes, I like that a lot. And I don't have an agent, don't have any, whatever, but I've queried a lot. And I think it's just taken me, I just started querying again in the last couple of weeks. I think it's taken me till this point. I mean, I've been writing to be published, to try and be published for like 10 years. And it's gotten me to this point where I'm like, you know what? I'm at that mindset where I'm like, I'm okay. Like, yes, it hurts a little bit to get I'm calling it a pass. I'm not calling it a no, but I got a pass the other day and I was like, okay, that's all right. Let's move on. And it's like, it takes some serious mind work to be able to get to that point, because I remember in the beginning, it was like a shot to the heart. Oh my gosh, these people hate me. They hate my work.
It's so true. I felt like I had fully reverted to like 14-year-old me. Yes. I literally paced my neighborhood with headphones in like I was in a music video. Just like the yearning for an agent.
Yes. You were staring out your window where the rain is trickling down. That's
yes, exactly.
Oh my goodness. It is a trying time. So all you querying people out there, we feel you.
Definitely.
Well, my next question, Rachel, I'd love to know, what's something you hope that readers will take away from the Library of Shadows?
I love this question because this book, like creating this book, and it's taken me like 3 years from the first draft to now being here. It has taught me so much. So I really hope that there's, gems, gems of goodness in there to be taken away. I think there are a few big things I want readers to kind of hold on to. there's obviously the through line of grief and just that the people that we have loved and then lost, that they don't ever really leave us. I think that there's so much that we can carry with us, even when those that we've like genuinely loved and will grieve for the rest of our lives have parted from us. We get to hold on to the things we loved about them. And there's a scene in the book that I still can't believe I wrote. Like, it makes me tear up, and I'm like, oh,
right?
This was the thing I needed myself to hear. But I also feel like there's this very, I mean, I don't know. It feels like you're not allowed to call your own work poignant, but it was the kind of moment in the book that I, again, was like, this was so cathartic for me to write, where Essays sort of grapples with the idea that you are allowed and maybe even should, while healing, like hurt and hope at the same time, and hold space for both of those feelings, because if you try to only have one, you're going to end up miserable. Like, if you only settle in the hurt, like, that's not going to give you the room you need to grow from something. But if you're trying desperately to cling to hope and disregarding the fact that you like have felt this emotional pain, you're also going to not be able to heal from that. And I think those are the big things that I certainly learned from the book. And I hope that readers feel that as they read it.
Oh, I love that. I think that is such a good thing to remember, because you know, with my experiences with grief, you don't ever heal from it, right? You take it and it becomes a part of you, and you move and grow with it. And I think that that's a good thing. And I think you can call your own work whatever you want, because I've laughed, I've cried at my own work, you know, that's fine. I think that's all right.
I feel like if we don't feel it as we make it, then how do we know it's really in there?
Exactly. Yes. If you're not feeling something, then nobody else is going to feel anything either.
Right.
Yes. Well, tell me who some of your favorite authors are and why you love them.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I have so many.
Oh, I bet.
I feel like off the top, I have to say Emma Lord. Emma Lord is like the queen of YA rom-coms. I will read literally anything she publishes. I know she's got a couple adult rom-coms coming out too, and I'm like, I will own them all. I will have my own personal Emma Lord library. It's not weird.
No,
but
it's not weird.
I'm obsessed.
Yeah. Yes.
I also really love Kelly Andrews' books. Her first book, The Whispering Dark,
she's wonderful.
Her prose is so evocative, and you just feel like you are right there. I absolutely gobbled that book up, and I cannot wait for her sophomore novel. I also obviously, like, I feel like everybody says this, but I love Casey McQuiston books. It was the first, reading Red, White, and Royal Blue was the first time I had read an adult rom-com. Like, I didn't know those books existed. And I remember...
They don't just make that for kids?
I had just moved to Los Angeles. I had a pool for the first time in my life, and I had a rom-com. And I was like, suddenly my life has been changed.
Yep. That's the perfect pool reading material.
It was so fun, and I remember actually laughing out loud, and I thought, I didn't know you were allowed to do this. I didn't know you could...
Yeah, isn't that great when you're like, oh, I learned something about how I can write or what I can do in a book? That's awesome.
Yes, and then the other, like, rom-com author that I think I have to read the books in private. They are steamy, but it's because they make me actually, like, crack up. Livy Hart writes the funniest rom-coms I've ever read.
Okay, I have not heard of her, but I'm going to write it down because I like a funny rom-com.
You will love it. You will love it. Her first two books are delightful.
Well, I'm going to brag a little bit about Kelly Andrew because I adore her. I met her back on like OG Twitter when it was wonderful and read a few of her manuscripts that never got published, but she has always just been amazing. And I mean, you know, I'd be like her beta reader and I'd be like, there's nothing that's wrong here. Like, just go get it published, right? She's so amazing. I'm so glad that she's having her day in the spotlight, you know?
Yes, I hope every drop of success comes her way.
Yes. Yes, me too. I'm with you there. So we talked a little bit already about how you got your degree in creative writing. So before that, were you a writer like growing up, or was it something you really just started thinking about, fiction wise? You said just during the pandemic, but before that, did you want to do some sort of writing?
Yeah. So I think that I was in a way both like I had like an early start to writing, but I think I also, not that I'm that late. Like I said, I'm 28. So
yeah, that's not that late.
we're fine. We're cruising, but
yeah.
When I was really, really young, so when I was in first grade, I like took a picture book I wrote to show and tell. And in the second grade, I read a poem I wrote in the talent show, which I don't think you're allowed to do, but I did do it. And so I think when I was young, I always knew that I wanted to write. I always loved to write, and I had a lot of support from my family for it. I like would write my mom poems for Mother's Day, and I started writing like poems and like song lyrics in junior high, and my parents were always really, really supportive of any kind of venture. Like my dad, bless his heart, used to read my school papers. He was like, wow, these are really good. And I'm like, thank you so much
too sweet.
for reading my environmental science research paper.
Yes.
And so when I decided to go to college and get my undergrad degree in creative writing, there was no like pushback from my parents, which I feel like I was really fortunate. There was no career path with it.
Right.
It was just a blind hope. I thought, I'm going to do something with this because the thought of studying anything else makes me feel like my skin is covered in scales and I'm going to just mummify and we will never survive this. So that was great. And I went to college and I didn't have any idea what I wanted to write. Like literally no idea. Every time I took a new class, I was like, wow, I really love this semester. And then the next semester would come and I would find something else I really, really loved. And I thought maybe I'll do that. So by the time I graduated, I had cycled through so many things, but I thought, well, maybe I'll move to Los Angeles and I'll become a screenwriter.
There you go.
Which is much easier said than done.
Yes.
But I did move to Los Angeles and I had a couple girlfriends that I went to college with who were also out there, and that was great. And I did that for a couple years. But when I got there, I thought, I really like books a lot. I really like these, and I think it would be really cool if I actually just tried to write one, because what is going to stop me?
Yeah.
I was a receptionist. I thought, this cannot be the way I spend the rest of my life. I don't want to just be a receptionist forever with my creative writing degree. I would like to actually use that.
Yeah.
And so I think a little bit of both. I don't think I saw myself as an author when I was like actually in college going to school for it. But when I was in high school, I was in the writing club. I probably would have believed you. You told me that I was going to become an author. I don't know.
Yeah, you would have been like, that's amazing. Let's do it.
There was a school assignment. I took 2 years of speech in high school, and one of them, I can't remember which year we did this in, but I should not have been able to do this. And our assignment was to give a speech as if we had been given an award, which is an interesting assignment.
That is
and I felt like I had prepped for this for so long.
You were practicing in the shower with the shampoo bottle.
You're right. And I think I gave myself the like best-selling author of the universe award, and that was what I accepted in my fake speech in my speech class in high school. And I don't know, we just discovered aliens. Like, that feels like a very achievable dream all of a sudden.
Oh, I love that so much. So thinking back to yourself as a receptionist, you're like, I can do this. Like, I love books. I'm gonna write something. What would you say to other people who are like, maybe don't know where to start or what to do? Like, what would your advice be to them?
Ooh, I love this question so much. My advice is sort of twofold. On one hand, I have the think about what you like to consume. It doesn't even have to be books. You could tell me I read one book a year, and I would say, great, if you want to write a book, you still can. Like, you don't have to be this prolific reader to write a book.
Right.
But if you only watch one kind of movies, if you, like really love a certain kind of music, think about the things that you love and let that inspire what you create. Because if you love it, you're going to love doing it as well.
Yeah.
And so I think on that side of things, like, definitely just follow your heart. Everybody says, like, don't try to write to the trends, because once it's on a bookshelf, like, that has been in the works for years. I think that's very true. But if you, like, love books about, why was the first thing that came to mind? Giant spiders? I don't know. But if you love those, and there's been a, like, burst of giant spider books, and you think, oh, the market is... like, it's so saturated. You should still write that.
You should.
On the other hand, I think, honestly, read Save the Cat. That's my advice.
Yes.
I was so lucky to read that in a screenwriting class in college. And I feel like it was so helpful to how I just thought about telling stories. And then Jessica Brody came out and said, actually, I'm going to transform books. Thank you. All books everywhere have been touched by Save the Cat Writes a Novel. What a time. Like, that would be the thing. If there's one craft book, read that one. But you could also read the Blake Snyder version, because I like that one better.
Well, I think that's great advice. Because, yeah, like we were talking about earlier with querying, when you're wanting to start to write, there's so many different resources, so many different people that say, oh, this is the right way to do it, or this is the best thing to do. So, yeah, Save the Cat is top-notch. Top-notch.
It's my go-to. It's true.
Yes. So if you were to genre hop, what is a genre you would like to write besides, YA, rom-com, spooky, ghost story?
Yeah. This is so hard because I don't think I ever want to write anything but romance.
There you go.
But if we're mixing genres in like a big book smoothie, I would love to try to write like a real like second world fantasy, something that feels like completely otherworldly. I think that would be really fun. I also think I would try my hand at like a thriller of sorts. I think that would be really fun. You could do
like a romance thriller.
Yeah, I think that those kind of like high concept romances have been like hot off the shelves lately. And I think that would be so fun to write because there's such, like when you think about, this is not a thriller, but it is a movie I love. Like National Treasure has a romance in it. Imagine if it had twice as much romance in it.
Yes. That would be amazing, actually. That makes me so happy. Please write that.
Okay.
Like a National Treasure kind of book, but with twice as much romance.
Okay, I'm on it.
There you go. Perfect. We've decided you're like third or fourth book, whichever one you're on. So I just have a few questions left for you. This next one, what is like some of the worst advice or about writing or publishing that you've been given? Like something that just didn't hit right or wasn't as good as you thought it was going to be.
I have a very brief story I would like to tell.
Tell us.
It is it's pretty to the point, frankly. But I had a couple different agents offer to represent me. And so I was able to hop on a call with a few of them, which was really, really enlightening. And one of the agents, who I want to be clear, like I'm sure is a great agent for the author she represents, but we did not see eye to eye on my book. And I think that during the call, but one of the things that really stuck out to me as not being sound advice was that during the call she recommended, for me specifically, to add 30,000 words to my manuscript. And my book at the time was 75,000 words. And while theoretically I had 30,000 words available to me if I were publishing a YA fantasy novel, right. I thought, you know what I am not going to do is add 30,000 words of what I feel is unnecessary fluff to my book. And while this isn't like traditional like advice you would get when you were writing or querying, like I heard it and the alarm bells kind of went off in my head. So I think for me it was just a testament to trusting your gut and knowing when something doesn't align with your vision, because it would have been fine. Like, the book probably would have survived and it could have sold still. And you know, with her vision, those 30,000 words made a ton of sense. But I really had to just sit and think, that is not what I see as being best for this book. And just knowing when to sort of pull back and say, actually, like, I have to believe myself here.
Well, here's what I love about that story, because that goes to show, I think so many times authors, we're querying, we just want an agent, right? We're like, just sign me. I need to be with an agent. And I think that's a good reminder of, like, don't just say yes to anybody who offers to represent you. Get on that call, you interview them, you ask them questions, and listen to your gut, because you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for, like, a super good relationship. Like the way you were talking about Claire earlier, right? Like, you adore her, you love her, you guys have a great agent-author relationship, and that should be the goal. And I think too often we don't retain our power as the authors in this situation, right? We're like, okay, somebody please just give me, a literary agent, but it's your product, it's your book. You're kind of the one in power there. I mean, you are the one in power there, and that's a good story to remember that and to trust your own gut, because it is your story.
Definitely.
Yeah. So 2 questions left. I'm counting them down now, apparently. What is something you like to do when you're not writing?
Okay, I love to go on little adventures. I don't need to go on a big adventure. I don't need to go to France. I would love to go to France. But I don't have to. I love to just put on a cute little outfit and go to a new restaurant or to a museum or, like, a coffee shop. And I love to take my silly little Instagram photos. Like, I just love it. It makes it feel like you're on vacation and you're probably just, like, down the road.
Which, you know what? There's always something to explore where you live that you haven't explored already.
Yes, absolutely. One time when I was a kid, we went, I kid you not, probably half an hour away. Suddenly, I was in the middle of nowhere eating frog legs. Like, how did I end up there? I don't know.
But you know what? You remember that because it was a little adventure.
Yes, I love little adventures just so much. Deep in my soul, I love them. I also love to play The Sims, which is great because then that feels like storytelling, and I like play little mind games, and I think, but they have storylines, and this is actually great practice for writing. I'm just doing world building, putting the couch in the living room.
Oh my gosh, I have spent many an hour on the Sims game because it's amazing. And when I was a kid, my siblings and I would just play, like I'm sure everybody does. Don't be weirded out by this, people, but you'd lock them all in a room and be like, who's going to die first?
In the old games when you would take the ladder out of the pool, like, ooh.
Yes. I don't know if they've made rules against that now, but oh my gosh, that was like super fun.
And that's why now we write books.
Exactly. That's why now I write books about murder specifically. So maybe that's just where my mind has always been. Oh my goodness. Well, Rachel, I have one question left. It is easy. It is fun. You've already told me some great favorite books right now, which I feel like, could answer this. But I'd love to know your favorite book right now, not your favorite book of all time. Just something you read recently that you're like, everybody needs to know about this.
Oh, yes. The book is The Blonde Identity by Ally Carter. It is my favorite book. It's so fun. It just came out on August 8th. So it's like very new still. If you haven't read it, you have to pick it up. I love it. We talked about high concept, like romantic comedies. Ally Carter no one does it better than her. That book is so good. It's so fun.
I love it. I love this question because it's like, I don't have enough books that I need to read. Let me just keep adding to that list. Why not? Well, Rachel, this was a blast. Thank you so much for coming on here with me, for chatting, for letting me and my listeners get to know you more and get hyped up about the Library of Shadows. Everybody, please go buy it, support this lovely book, and I cannot wait to read about the 100-year-old ghost who I'm sure we're all going to fall in love with. So everybody, please, and thank you, Rachel. It was been so fun.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved being here.